There you go.
Is this better?
You're getting everyone's attention.
Okay. Attention, everyone.
That was
May I
re-
introduce
Wait,
this
I think
famous man?
I'm
Sean-
supposed to introduce you.
Sean Rushbrook. Go right ahead.
I'm not sure how this is working. We have the talent introducing the MC. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to be here. This is part of our TSJG Spotlight service, series, not service, series, Spotlight series. I can speak English. We've had an exciting few of these. Unfortunately, they were always scheduled when I had meetings. So Quincy, thank you for getting this on my calendar so no one could schedule a meeting over it. We are going to hear today from Armini Shishmanian, Kay Lang, and Joyce Aiken, three very talented artists. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm going to turn the time over to Armini because you're here to hear you, not me.
Thanks so much, Sean. And I want to thank all of you for coming here today. I'm really pleased to see such a nice crowd of people who are interested in our artwork. So thank you for coming. I hope we can entertain you, and I hope we can educate you in a little bit of a way. I wanted to tell you about my art journey, which is way different than Kay's and Joyce's. I started a very unplanned journey. I was a 60-year-old grandma, had never anticipated or had any aspirations for art, but it turned out that my husband and I had moved to a new location. We had downsized our home. The children were gone, and I had a friend there who was a watercolor artist. She was a professional, and she offered to teach me how to paint in watercolor. And so since I had plenty of free time, I thought it would be the perfect thing to do. So I took her up on it, and we started meeting weekly, and actually we're joined by many of you know her, Judy Perot. She was also a neighbor. And we started learning the basics of watercolor painting. I love doing it. I love the drippiness of watercolor. I love the colors are so rich, but I was not very good at drawing. And consequently, I decided I'd better go and take some classes in drawing so I can feel comfortable with what I've created. So I was searching, and I looked at the Fresno State schedule, and they had a program called the 60 Plus program, which was offered to people 60 years and older, all seniors, to take any class that was available, where space was available in the classrooms, and take whatever it was that they offered. And it was like, I don't remember exactly, but it seems to me it was $5 a class. Is that right, Joyce? So what a deal this was. Anyway, I got into some wonderful drawing programs. The first one was just basic elementary drawing, and that spurred me on to take additional classes in figure drawing, and that went on for several years, followed up by sculpture, which I don't want to jump the gun, but anyway, after about a year or two of doing the watercolor classes with Marcia, I was offered by a friend to work with a group that she was part of, a sculpture group. And it happened that it was summertime, it was summer break. And so when she asked me if I'd like to do it, I said, well, I'm really not interested in making sculpture. However, I'll do it for the summer. I had to eat those words, because when I first got my hands into the clay, it was just so sensual and beautiful. I fell in love with the project. So anyway, the first day that I went to the sculpture group, I learned how to make an armature, which is the foundation for whatever figure or image that you're going to create. And here we are. This is the first sculpture that I made. It took me several weeks. Each week, we would meet once a week. And this piece is called Hope. I finished it in, I can't remember how long it took, but maybe 4 or 5 attempts. And I was really pleased with what I had created. And so I decided to have it cast in bronze. And that's what you're seeing here, the bronze finish. I also decided to enter it into the Fresno County Fair. And believe it or not, I won first place. Thank you. I was just thrilled to death because I had very few aspirations, but interestingly, her name was Hope, and I was hoping that I was at least going to be accepted, and then to be placed first was amazing. Well, of course, that was very encouraging. And I continued on. I started taking workshops with actually our sculpture group. We went to Taos and and we did another project, another image. This is my little granddaughter. She was 13 years old at the time. And that piece was given to my daughter and her husband. But I decided to put wings on this little baby because to me, she looked like a little cherub. And you'll see that in the back. I continued to take classes in art, primarily in sculpture and in relief sculpture at the Scottsdale Art School, which I absolutely loved. If anybody wants to improve their skills in art, I would highly recommend it because they were world-class artists who presented to us, and the classes were 1 week long, about 8 hours a day, and you could stay as late as you wanted if you had the urge to continue on. By the end of 8 hours, though, I was dead meat. I'd go home. But anyway, the classes were wonderful. I learned so much in sculpture and in relief sculpture that I was thrilled. But even then, as in earlier, I never called myself an artist. I always thought that an artist was many steps beyond where I was or where I would ever be. But I started receiving commissions from people, requests for commissions of images of their children, grandchildren, family members who had passed that they wanted to commemorate. And so slowly I started doing these people, and I was feeling pretty good about it. Interestingly, my life has taken many twists and turns. As you can probably see, I went from watercolor to sculpture. I was asked to do a commission for the Fresno State's Kremen School of Education and Development in 2005 to create an award for Carolyn Dobbs' commitment to special ed education. And when I submitted my drawings for them, thank goodness for these drawing classes at Fresno State, they were legible, and they accepted what I had offered to them. This is the piece that was accepted. The one on the left is the clay unfinished model, and then the one on the right is the bronze. Every year since 2005 to 2019, the Special Ed Teacher of the Year has received one of those awards along with Carolyn Dobbs Award. So I was really, really proud and happy to be able to do something that was a public entity. After that, in 2008, I was a request was made by the William Saroyan Society to do a commission piece of him. William Saroyan, I don't know if you know, was an Armenian-American author who lived in Fresno, well-known, but also an international author. And 2008 was the anniversary of his 100th birthday, and they wanted to commemorate it as well as raise funds for the society. So this is after several submissions of models that I was interested in doing, this is what they came up with, what I came up with, and what they selected. And the reason for the bicycle, I don't know if you know anything about Saroyan. I see people shaking their heads, but he was well known in Fresno to ride his bike up and down Shaw Avenue near Palm Avenue. And you could see him, he did this probably daily. And so that was an accessory that was typical of Saroyan's. And so this is the piece. The one on the left was the clay model, and you can see the difference between that and the bronze model. It adds a little touch of class to it. And it is almost indestructible. The next public entity that contacted me. I was by this time in a gallery. By the way, I wanted to tell you, I'm just hitting the high points of my life because there was a lot that went on in between. But I was in the gallery called A Sense of Place Gallery, and in walked a judge from the 5th District Court of Appeal. And he was looking around at my work as well as other people's work. But he came back to me and he asked me if I would be interested in doing a commission for the 5th District Court of Appeal. Well, I was flabbergasted, needless to say. I really didn't feel that I qualified, but he honored me. He said, of course you are. He had already selected, I think it was 7 pieces. And the 2 that you see up here are, again, Armenian American related. They're Armenian dancers. And they were selected and placed in the meeting room where the judges met. And an aside is that the 5th District Court of Appeal was built in our old Armenian town in downtown Fresno, which made it very close to my heart. So they were all installed. It was fun to see the judges and how they accepted these, because I think of judges as stern and serious, but they were having a kick out of seeing all the sculptures come in and placing them in various areas in the Court of Appeal. But the last piece that I want to show you that was a commissioned work was for the 2015 commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide. Being of Armenian American extraction, it was close to my heart. And I knew that there was going to be a commemoration, but I had no idea that I might be included. One evening for Art Hop, Mary LaFollette came in. At that time, she wasn't living here, and with friend Larry Balakian, and they were both, after I greeted them, they cruised around the gallery and then came back and said, would you consider showing your work at an exhibition at the Fresno Arts Center? And just like right now, I was almost speechless. I couldn't imagine being selected for something like that because it was way beyond my area of expertise, I thought. But they assured me that it would fit right in. And they placed me in the museum with 10 other artists, all male, all world renowned. And there was me, one female unknown artist from Fresno. Well, I was really, really honored and humbled and had a wonderful time. It was a fabulous show, well attended by the community, well supported by the community. And I see several people here who actually supported it. And another plus was that I was interviewed by PBS, and they took a video of me as they were interviewing me, and had done also videos of other Armenian Americans in Fresno, put together a video for the PBS show that's being shown annually here in Fresno and the surrounding areas for the April 24th commemoration. So anyway, as you can see, many, many things had happened in my life. And it was very exciting, very gratifying. One of the special things that happened was it strengthened my relationships with other artists in the community. I see Evelyn Rurik in the back. We knew her. I knew her from years before because our husbands were both radiologists, but in addition to that, we connected through painting in my so-called gallery, which was actually my garage. And then Jean Preston, who was in the original sculpture group, we would meet weekly in her backyard, in her studio. And so those relationships got stronger and stronger. We had lots of fun sharing ideas, put many working hours in creating, and also just organize. Oh, another thing that we did with Gene Preston as our leader, was that we started up annual art shows and started out in Gene and Lawrence's backyard. But subsequently, annually, we were having art shows, which most of the time were held in Northwest Church, and drew a lot of artists and a lot of interest. So by this time, I was regularly an artist being shown at a Sense of Place gallery. Ginny Burdick was my instructor and gallery owner, and she taught me how to paint in pastel. And here are some of the pastel pieces that I did. This was not under Ginny's direction. Primarily, she taught me the technique, but she loved to paint with landscapes and that sort of thing, and she taught me how to do that. But I'm an animal lover, and one of the things I decided to do several years later was to do animal portraits. And this is the portrait of my dog, my sweetie's grandma, who was a winner in an art show. I mean, an art show, a dog show. And you can see that she was just so animated and had so much energy. She was really fun to do, and you could see that she was a winner. On the left is my friend Boyd and Lene Klein's kitty, who is since gone, but they gave me a photograph of this cat, and it was so beautiful. I wanted to make a painting of it, and I think it's so apropos. First of all, the cat itself was beautiful, but secondly, it was like she was praying. He actually was praying. His paws were on a Bible, and it was so appropriate because Lene and Boyd are both Bible teachers here at TSJG, and it just seemed to fit perfectly. So I was happy to make this for them. And this little character over here is Gloria Kunz's grand dog. She commissioned me to do that as a work for her daughter for Christmas. And anyway, I made this for her. So it just goes to show you how many different media I was working with. I was working with watercolor, oil. I haven't shown you any of the paintings there, but there are a couple in the back. Collage. What else have I done? Relief sculpture, regular sculpture. I even worked with fresco, and I loved fresco, but it seemed like the public wasn't crazy about it, so I stopped making that. But when COVID struck, suddenly there was a lockdown. And by this time, I had met who turns out to be a wonderful friend, Joyce Aiken. And my daughter had asked me, Mom, now that you're locked down, what are you going to do in art? And I said, I'm not sure. I didn't want to make a lot of canvases that I had no place to store with paintings on them. So she said, how about doing this rock art and then distributing the pieces? She taught me how to do it. It was just like a one afternoon of playing house with her. And so we played together, and then I came over and asked Joyce if she would be interested in making some art, rock art also. And so these are some of the ones. I'm sorry, those are my images. I didn't have Joyce's with me. But anyway, we decided to distribute about 8 to 10 a piece for close to a year, and just distributed them weekly throughout the complex. And we're so surprised that we had a lot of people who were collecting. And if they didn't collect, they could always pass them to friends. And so we were honored. In addition to that, thanks to Joyce, who is close to Donald Monroe, we wound up in a televised show on his show, and the audience was canvassed. I don't remember exactly when it was, but we were selected as one of the top shows that he had shown. We were very happily surprised. So this is a very loose overview of the last 26 years of my life. I've loved doing what I've been doing. I've met wonderful people. I've had unexpected experiences that were just so special. And that's about it. I hope I am able to do this for the rest of my life. As long as I can stand or sit and do it, I'll be happy to do it because it's just part of my life now. And I've learned so much. I found it very fulfilling. And taking this journey has just been a high point in my life. And I hope if any of you have any time in your lives and don't know what to do with it, I hope that you select some kind of activity that will fulfill you, if nothing else. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Kay Lang. I'm sorry to follow Harmony because she speaks so well. I want to apologize if I mumble. Just yell at me if I do. I'll try again. So I've been an artist most of my life. I came here to Fresno State to take classes at Fresno State and found Joyce Aiken. And I was trying everything in the art department. I had 7 majors before I found art, so I was really confused. When I found art, it seemed like home. And I had all these ideas, crazy ideas that I wanted to do, but I didn't have any courage. I go to Joyce and say, I want to do this, I want to do that. She said, do it. That's all it took. She changed my life. So anyway, I'm going to show you, I had a lot of shows before they show this work, but I'm going to show you pieces from her first series that were internationally recognized, and then show you pieces from my last work that I just did before I retired. So this is a flower series from 1983. Thank you. And it's mostly photographs in the studio. I built a light table in the studio and I went to the flower mart in San Francisco and got flowers they'd throw away. I had to go there at 4 in the morning to get anything at all. And I bring that back to the studio and photograph them. I was in my mid-30s at the time, and I was noticing that I had wrinkles. I was appalled at that. I just didn't want to have wrinkles. I wanted to be wrinkle-free, so I decided to photograph dying flowers so I can examine all the things around dying. So these are metaphors. This is called Those Who Dream of Flying. This is called Wedding. Actually, it's for my divorce. This is called Database. It's when I got my first computer, I couldn't figure it out. This is Ophelia. This is called Garden of the Delights after the Bush painting. I like to call this courage. I call this sisters after my sister and myself. We argue over who is who. So 30 years later, I did another flower project. I did a lot of stuff in between, but I did a flower project in 2013, 30 years later. And I was growing my first garden at the time, and was just amazed at how everything changes in a day in the garden. You go plant something in the garden and you see it's completely different the next day. I wanted to capture that life force in the garden, so I'm doing a montage of these photographs. I set my tripod in the garden, didn't move it. I just changed the focus on each picture. So I'll share that. This is the installation shot of the show that Joyce and I had in Oakland. This is what they look like in the show without any people in front of them. Also, I had horizontal photographs going down the hallway. I need a soundtrack. So that's it. So I'd like to invite you to come to my house and here in Gardens, 254B in Tuscany. I'm building the same kind of garden. Thank you.
What an honor to be able to talk with, following these two wonderful artists. Their work is so beautiful. I mean, so impressed. Aren't you impressed with the quality of the work? I think it's fabulous. They're so professional. Then we will come to what I'm going to show you. So this is a photograph of the Fulton Mall when it was first established. Well, the trees are pretty well along, but the mall was built in 1964, and besides opening it up for pedestrian-only traffic, there was an art committee that was formed. O.J. Woodward was the head of it, and they raised enough money to buy sculpture for the mall, and they got some good sculpture. And then one day, at the first of the summer that year, OJ called me and said, you know, we have bench panels that are going to have mosaic panels behind them, and there are going to be 9 of them. So there are 18 panels because they were two-sided, and we have a small budget, but we found an artist in Los Angeles who will do them. But because the money isn't very much, she's going to do all of them with the same design. So there would be 18 panels all with the same panel, same design. And so he said, but we're opening it up for artists here if anyone wants to submit ideas and do the project here locally. So I talked to Jean Ray Laurie, who was now a very close neighbors of mine. And I said, have you ever done any mosaic? And she said, no. And I said, I haven't done any mosaics either, but we should be able to figure out how to do this. So we submitted our ideas, and we were then selected to do the mosaics. And so there are 18 panels. This is one side of the panel. The other side is similar, but this is when it first opened. And these are some of the panels. Some of the panels are almost 20 feet long. Thanks, that's good. And it was in August when we were able to install them. And it was so hot in August that we could not do them during the daytime. So we'd go downtown at 9 o'clock at night with our tile contractor and wet down the back bench panels, and then we'd put up the designs. And neither one of us knew how to do this. So we did some research, and we found out that the best way to do it was to work on butcher paper. So we had, the panels are 2 feet high and up to 19 feet long. So we cut squares of paper that were 2 feet square. And then we would cover it with molasses, and then we'd put our tiles on them. And we put the tiles upside down so that when we went down at night and the contractor would put the mud on the cement, then we'd pick these up and put them up. And then when they were firmly set, we would wet them down and take it off. You don't have to do it that way now. They have a mesh that you can put around, but it was a learning experience. And so these are some of the panels. These are some of the longer panels. And then we did 13 drinking fountains. And the drinking fountains have just evaporated. Nobody knows where they are. They have gone away somewhere. And this was, again, we had a circle about this big, about 2 feet across. And we put all of our tiles on there, on the molasses. Then we got down to install them. And they had already put these drinking fountains out, so we couldn't flip it over. We tried doing it, and all of them spilled out on the bottom. So we redesigned them as we went along. This is another one of the drinking fountains. We'd like to have at least one of them back, but we don't know where they are. And this was one of the panels that we did that we looked at on the wall, because we did all of these in cut paper designs first, and we put them up in my backyard, and then we would work from that on doing the actual tile work. And we thought we like this design a lot. We thought there must be something else we can do with it besides just this one tile. So we ended up, because of the shape of it, we ended up making headboards. And so we did a number of painted wood headboards. And because Jean Ray Laurie is an applique quilt person, we started doing what we referred to as wood applique, because we would stack these up, we'd build on top of them. Some of them are almost an inch thick, the wood is. So we paint the edges a different color than the top. They got quite involved. And we did some children's headboards, a lot of children, a lot of toy-like things on them. And then we entered them in the California Design Show in Los Angeles, big show, which got a lot of publicity. And the Los Angeles Times did a double spread of our work. So that brought in a lot of other people who wanted furniture, painted furniture. So we started doing that, headboards and bedroom furniture mostly, having them built and then designing them. And finally, after a couple of years of that, I said to Jean, I'm not going to do this anymore, because a woman from Los Angeles had sent me a lock of her daughter's hair, and it was auburn, and she wanted the headboard designed around that color. And I said, this has gone too far. I can't do this kind of thing anymore. So we quit doing that, and we started doing another project, because Jean and I had done a lot of work for design for magazines, and we had a publisher who came to us and asked us if we would do some books on how to make projects. So we did this rug book that was one of our first ones. That's in the background is one of our wood dividers, and we had people from the artist, because Jean Laurie had traveled so much around the country with her quilt program, that she knew so many artists that she could pass out information saying, we're going to do a book about rugs. Do you have anything you'd like to submit to us? So we had a lot of people who submitted ideas to us. This is, you probably could recognize it if you knew Jean, because this is a Jean Laurie felt rug. We did a lot of felt rugs. Felt is really pretty good as a rug, and it can be cleaned and it comes right back. Very nice. This is a felt rug that I made. The color is very faded here. It was much brighter. Jean and I designed in such a different way. Her designs were usually flat and very decorative, and mine were very different from that. So we worked together. In fact, Jean used to, when people would say to us, how do you like collaborating with another artist? And Jean said, it's always half the work and twice the fun. So we were very close friends, and so we had a good time doing these projects, though it kept us so busy. She had a family, I had a family, I was teaching full-time at Fresno State, and it was a busy time, but I don't know, when you're young and you're in your 30s, I mean, you can do anything. So we did. And then we did a book about body coverings and clothing, artist clothing. And the publisher of this one said to me one day, we're going to have you go on a book tour, and you can start on the West Coast and then end up in New York. And he said, is there anything you would like to do when you got to New York? And he said, who would you like to meet with to interview? I said, why don't we get on the Today Show? And he said, that's impossible. But he said, I'll see. And the next thing I know, Jean and I are being interviewed by, what is her name? Barbara Walters. She went right out of my mind because she was not an easy person to be with. And they gave us 8 minutes, which is a big time. Usually they do 4-minute segments. They did 8 minutes of these body coverings. We had a whole lot of clothes. And all Jean could say was to her assistant, why do I have to talk about clothes when I'd rather talk about the news? So anyway, we had an interesting time there. This is a picture of Jean Laurie in one of her outfits. And this is one of me, which I had taken a quilt top and cut it up and made a dress out of it. And then I took my picture and had it put on the front of these T-shirts. I silk screened a lot of T-shirts with my picture on the front. And on the back is another picture of myself turning around. So you just see the back of me turning around as if you're saying, yes, it's really me. And then I tried to get my family to wear them and they wouldn't. My kids said there was no way they were going to wear those to school. And then we did a book, a tote bag book. The woman who was a publisher of these books was so good at marketing. She had formed craft clubs all over the United States. So when we did this book, she pre-sold 100,000 copies because of all these. That was the most successful. I mean, it's odd that this is the most successful book we had. But anyway, we had a lot of different kinds of totes. You know, kids' totes and tennis bags and such. And then we did the pantyhose craft book, which is this woman who was the editor of our publisher called one day and talked to Jean and said, I go through 2 or 3 pairs of pantyhose every week. Can you do a book about it? And Jean said, sure we can. And I said, oh, do we really have to do it? Because Jean loved working with pantyhose in this kind of thing, you know, where she could do sculpture. She did a lot of sculpture with pantyhose. But it was not an easy book. And years later, I saw an article in a magazine, the back of the magazine, where they show where you can buy all kinds of books. And there was a category called Weird and Wonderful. We were right there at the top of Weird and Wonderful. We did all of these kinds of things. And then the next, before I show the next slide, I have to give you a little bit of background on it. When I was about 20 years old, no, I was in my 20s, I had to go to my grandmother's funeral, and I suffered through it, and then I felt really kind of awful about it because there was such a prominence of all this overkill on things. There was that's a little funny thing to say. And the bronze coffin and all that. And I came home, and years later, I said to my husband, you know, I really want to make my own coffin. I want to make a plain pine box because I just don't want this kind of ostentatious thing. And my husband said, the biggest mistake of his life, he said, I don't want you buried in a plain pine box. It would embarrass me. So I decided to embarrass him. And I asked him one day, I said, I had a workshop in my barn, and it had all kinds of woodworking tools and saws and sanders and all. And I asked him if he would help me with a project. And he said, sure. And he said, what are you going to make? And I said, I'm going to make a box. He said, no, you're going to make a coffin. And I said, we're going to make a coffin. So I did this, and this is not typically my style, all of this decoration, but it seemed to fit with this project. So I have, it's all cut and painted wood. And he wanted me to put my name on it because he didn't want anyone to think it was his. So I have that. And then I went to the cemetery. I spent a lot of time in cemeteries, and I started putting things on it. It says like gone but not forgotten, which is very typical of some of the old headstones, or mother, wife, and friend. And then I put another saying on top that says, she lies below in a fancy box because she was vain and liked pretty things. And I had it lined with pink velvet. I finally had to fill it with things because my younger son kept crawling into it because he liked that surrounded with velvet. So I made a headstone and a footstone, two of them the same. And then I made this is a show I was in at the Oakland Museum. And that's a dress, a burial dress was very loose. So that I just had a belt around the center so that if I got big or little or if it would still fit. And then I made a shroud of all those things that were important to me at the time. And then I had the Personal Art Museum asked me if I would do a show around the coffin. And so I did a whole show called Honoring Death. And I went through all of the pictures and I kept looking at obituary pictures in the newspaper, and they'd have someone's picture who was 90 years old, but the picture was from when they were graduated from high school. So I decided I would go back through and I'd choose those all the way up. This is when I was 16 and when I graduated from high school. And when I was head of the art department at Fresno State, you can see the difference see how businesslike I am here. And so it goes through all different stages of my life. I think this might be the last one. And then I went on to do a series for that show that had to do with something much more contemporary, much more close to my life at that time. This is a reliquary. When my husband died and he was cremated, these are the bones that were left. And I talked to my children and I told them I was going to make this piece, and I asked them if that was okay with them, and they said, "We're so used to it by now, it's perfectly okay." And so I was so taken by the honoring of people with reliquaries when I was in Italy or in Mexico, because they would have a bone from a saint or such, and they would recess it into a cross, and then they would line it with jewels. And it was a very important thing, and I wanted to honor my husband in this way. So those are recessed, so that it does sit back a little bit. And then instead of jewels, those are his high school medals, for his sport medals. So that was one of the pieces I did for the show. And this is another one that's in the 1800s. There would be a lot of times people would gather things that were important that belonged to the deceased, and they would put them in a little bag. So these are some of those things that I felt were really important for memories. And on the right-hand side is a little scroll that explains what each one of those things mean. And then I had one that when I was getting ready to move here, I was distributing everything to my children. And so I went through my house and I photographed everything. I had about 100 photographs, mostly of art pieces and such, besides furniture and things. And I sent them to my children, like 10 at a time, and I'd say, choose 2 or 3 pieces that you want. And then out of all of those pieces, there was only one piece that they both wanted, which was very nice. They had separate kind of desires. So this is a piece called What They Want. And these are the scrolls, so that everything is written down on there, so that you know who gets what. And then there was some times when I lived in Clovis, and one of the things that we had to, we were obligated to do was to go to the Clovis Rodeo every year. And I hated going to after about 8 or 9 rodeos, I stayed home and I made this piece about a rodeo. And that is using the sewing machine as a drawing tool. So I would draw with the sewing machine. And then my kids came, my son was in college. He was probably 22. And he came home and I said, because we lived in Clovis, he was familiar with everything. I said, have you ever been to Clovis downtown to Jim's place where you can actually drink and dance? And he said, no, he'd never been there, and neither had his friends. So we all went one night down, and this is a picture of Jim's place, the dancing at Jim's place, because the boys were young and nice looking, and they danced with all the ladies there that night. And they had such a good time, so I did this piece. And then this is one called Drinking at Jim's Place. Again, it's using the sewing machine for a drawing. And then this is not a good slide. I'm going to skip it. I started doing mandalas, which are for me are meditation pieces, and they are often circular, not always circular. Some of them are square, but it draws you into a space in the center of the piece, and that's what these pieces are about. And I work with all fabrics, silk fabrics, and I just love the feel of them and the color of them, the vibrancy of the color. They're so beautiful to work with. So these are some of those pieces. This piece is one that I have in the back. You can see some of the pieces that we all brought in some things so that you can take a look at some of those things. And this is the last piece I'll tell you about. A few years ago, I had a call from someone putting together a show here in Fresno because it was an anniversary of Allen Ginsberg's poem Howl, which was performed, what he read in San Francisco, and it was banned as being pornographic, and there were arrests involved and all kinds of things going on. So this is a piece I did for that show, which I put behind these so it's as if it's being censored in a way, so that if you want to read the poem, it's all written in there. It's a very long poem. I wrote as much as I could of it, and then in order to read it, you have to open it up to see it, so that takes in the censorship of it. And I think that's the last piece I have. There. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming out, and especially thank you to our three presenters and sharing their amazing talent. If you haven't had a chance, please go to the back and look at some of their pieces in person. I believe you'll be staying around and you can ask our artists any questions personally. But thank you.